welcome back to my channel. Today, and in this video, we're going to be reading Credence, and we're going to be telling you about it.
Unfortunately.
We took notes from the last dbbc on what y'all enjoyed and didn't enjoy about our, experimental vlogging, and a lot of y'all actually recommended that we read the book at the same time and do these benchmark updates together, like a classic Chandler vlog, but Hayden's here and reading the same book.
Yeah. Oh boy, do we have one for you today.
We're at the 20-ish% mark. We're 6-ish chapters into Credence by Penelope Douglas. And, I asked patrons what they wanted to see from a dbbc. I gave them 4 options, and this is the book that they selected pretty unanimously, I would say. I am regretting putting this as an option. I read this book back in 2019.
You gave them options?
Read this book back in 2019 when it first came out. And at the time, I think I was just so caught up in it. I read it within 24 hours, back to back, one sitting kind of thing. And I thought it was sort of fun at the time. In retrospect, I don't necessarily feel that way now. So
you don't like having fun with your uncle?
Let's talk about it. All right. This book is about our main character, Tiernan. And she is in a bit of a pickle because both of her parents have met their unfortunate, untimely demise. I guess her dad had cancer or something like that, and instead of sticking around to take care of her daughter,
they got 2 orders of soup.
Yep, 2 orders of the good stuff. As one does, step uncle calls you up and is like, hey, you want to come live with me and my 2 sons? And she's like, I've got nothing else to do.
Well, she was basically left to him in the will.
Yeah, but he was like, you don't have to come. You can. She was like, all right. Fuck it.
I'm technically your guardian until you're of age. So just to point this out, because as I was telling Chandler earlier, this goes to show a lot about how unhinged this book is, that I was 6 chapters in before I remembered that she is underage this whole time. Yeah, she is 17. Yeah, he's like, hey, you can come live with us if you want, until you turn 18 in, 10 weeks or something like that?
Yeah.
So she's almost legal.
Which, is not great. It's not something that is uncommon in romance. I think authors try to ratchet up the taboo by doing things like that. Let's make this character just now 18 or still in high school but legal. That's often something that authors do. And I'm not saying that I enjoy it. I'm saying that it didn't raise any red flags, I think, the first time I read this book. And honestly, even this time around, it wasn't something that I was immediately oop, red flag.
Well, yeah, that's because they're waving the red bull cape in front of you with other things, to the point that you don't see the tiny red flag behind.
Yes, that's exactly right. I think for me, this first 20%, we have Tiernan going to, is it Colorado, I believe? And she's staying with her uncle and these 2 cousins. I mean, she's never met these people before, so it's not like they have a real familial relationship to begin with, but surprised me, I guess, this time around, seeing how Jake, the uncle, treats Tiernan and the things that he expects her to do. She's grieving the loss of her parents, and he's just not very nice. He's kind of callous about it.
Yeah, I mean, he's being a real piece of shit.
I'm also bored at the same time. There's a lot of red flags, not even to mention the end of chapter 6, which was, wow, a doozy. What a fucking ride so far. How are you feeling? Give us your thoughts, Hayden.
Just too many to count. Could already feel where this book was going after the opening scene with the untimely demise of her parents. I was like, wow, this is starting off real sexy. And also, her parents never loved her, so we got that going for her, which is great.
Seeking some love.
Telling Chandler earlier, I think that I'm noticing now in the second Penelope Douglas book that I'm reading, they do 2 things a lot: trauma and potentially problematically dominating male characters.
Yeah.
And I will just use dominating as an overarching word to describe rude, a bully, lacking consent, thinking that someone is property, and also full of rage and ordering someone around, and you just all of that combined into one is basically every male character in a Penelope Douglas book.
Which is interesting because these are the only 2 that you've read, and that is not the case. A lot of their books, I personally think, feel different.
Oh yeah, the male character's very sweet.
Some of them
are. Very gentle.
Some of them are.
No, okay.
It just really depends on the book. I do think that they tend to lean into, certain sort of archetypes because that's what they prefer to write, and I think do what you want.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
not my cup of tea, let me tell you.
I think that looking back on like my enjoyment of this book, the first time I read it, trying to think about like what really drew me in, I personally enjoyed I don't want to say I enjoyed the trauma, but I enjoyed Tiernan's backstory. I thought it was compelling. I thought it was interesting. I think oftentimes we get like pretty polar opposite parental figures, right? We either get like toxic, abusive, like on page, horrible parents and you're trying to run away from them, or you get parents that are like really loving and great, or like maybe your parent has tragically passed away and you really loved them or something like that. I don't think often we get just neglectful parents who maybe weren't meant to be parents on page, and I personally liked that, and I liked the way that Tiernan kind of grew as the story went on. I'll be curious to see if I feel the same way this time around, but I remember really liking her growth as a character over the course of the book, and I also enjoyed her personal relationships with 2 of the 3 of the guys in the book as well. I thought they were kind of fun and like...
You mean like the 2 that talk?
Yeah.
Aside from the male characters, I also noticed a lot of parallels this book to Punk 57 in terms of the female character as well, which is kind of shy, and also it's like the trauma at the beginning of the book, having a family member die or someone close to one of the main characters, right? Are you forgetting how Punk 57 begins?
She, the heroine in that book, doesn't have anyone die.
No, I know, sorry, I just meant like in general. There's a lot of parallels in general, right?
Okay, sure.
Family member dying,
okay.
Neglectful parent.
It's interesting your read, I guess, of the female main characters, because I don't see either of these characters that way. I do think Tiernan's maybe a little quieter, but I think both of them are characters that fight back. Like, to me, shy means submissive, I guess, in a way too.
No, I just mean like they...
And I don't feel that way about really any of Penelope's characters. I think that's something that I personally am attracted to in their books, is that they don't write female main characters that are just going to like lie down and take whatever you throw at them, and I like that.
Oh no,
personally.
I'm just saying like at the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. So she barely responds to like anyone, even when they're making personal digs at her in this book, right? In the other book, the character is unable to share her true feelings because she's scared about what other people might think of her.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think, again, that's probably why I like their book so much, is like you do have characters that start one way and then they end up a different way. That is one of the biggest things that I look for in romance. I feel like the longer that I read, the more that I see the important characteristics of a successful romance in my eyes, and one of the biggest characteristics is having characters who actually grow. Typically, the only growth that I see in romance characters is them growing to love each other from like an enemies to lovers perspective, or them learning how to communicate with each other, and that's all great and fine, but typically when you're reading a romance, especially a new adult romance or with younger characters maybe in their early 20s, I want to see this character like actually grow as a person, because a lot of the time that's necessary to have a successful romantic relationship, not just growing in the relationship but outside of it to become a better partner. And
sometimes that growth involves having fun with your cousins and your uncle.
We'll report back when we have more thoughts and feelings. I feel like at this 20% mark, actually no, I can't even, no.
How are we gonna broach this one?
What do you have to say?
Wee woo, wee woo.
What do you have to say?
We have a consent alert. Consent alert.
The consent king has some things to say.
Do I? I mean, I don't even think that it needs to be said. I think it's very obvious the problems that I might have with this particular part of the book.
Sure,
and I'm assuming that it's gonna happen a lot.
I wouldn't say that.
We're 20% in.
Would not say that, actually.
Okay.
And I think that's maybe why I glossed over it. It happened early on in the book, and then I was like, okay, is this going to keep happening? So I kept reading, and it didn't really continue to happen, but it was problematic. So there are 3 men in Dear Tiernan's life. We've got Jake, Noah, and Caleb. And Jake's the uncle, and he's kind of like gruff, grumpy sunshine kind of thing. We've got Noah, who's just like kind of a free-spirited, like, I don't know how to describe him. Like, he's just like
a normal, he's just a normal guy.
He's like 20. He's like, I don't want to live with my dad anymore. I gotta get out of here. And then you've got Caleb, who is nonverbal and a bit of a predator. Comes into the garage with a bloody carcass and blood gushing down his back. I believe he's shirtless at this point. He throws it down on a table. He sees Tiernan. He approaches,
catches a little bit of under titty
and attacks her, I suppose. It was unsettling.
If you want to call it attacking.
It was unsettling. And it's so challenging as a reader to determine certain things, because it was uncomfortable to read, it was not pleasant, and yet Tiernan says during this scene both no, and then we also get her internal dialogue about how she's into this at the same time. The no seemed like the bigger deal for sure, and it was just hard to read. My thing is, like, why did this scene need to be included? As someone who has read this book before, and as someone who has finished it, I don't understand the purpose. I think you could have this, like, animal attraction, if you will, between these two characters represented in a very different way. And maybe, I don't know, when she says stop, he immediately stops, and she leaves the premises, and then that's the break in tension, and you're like, ooh, like, I want to see what's going to happen with them in the future. Instead of having this deeply unsettling scene where she is trying to get away and can't get away.
And she yells stop so many times that it wakes up the other cousin, and he comes in and essentially pulls Caleb off.
Yeah, I just struggle. And I won't lie, once I got to that part of the book, I was like, why did I put this as an option, and why is this book so beloved? And that is coming from someone who enjoys this author. And I want to be clear when I do these videos in general, that when I make videos in general, I respect authors, right? And I respect an author's desire to write whatever they want to write. Like, I'm not here to, like, just dunk on someone and shit on someone, but it is worrying to me that this is something that's included in this book, and that this is a book that so many people enjoy. And it would be irresponsible for me, I feel like, not to point that out.
Look at you. Responsible.
I don't need a pat on the back. I just, like, it's challenging, and I want you guys to know that it is sometimes challenging for me to make videos talking about books when I don't want to yuck people's yum. I respect how hard it is to write a book, and yet also shit be fucked up sometimes, you know? Like, it's challenging, I guess, to say things and to word things in a respectful way, but, like, I can't help but point this out, that this is, like, not okay.
Yeah, I'm really excited that I'm only a fifth of the way through. Just so excited.
We're gonna push through. I
was gonna say thank you to everyone who, voted and chose this book, but honestly, thank you to you for putting this as an option for people to vote for.
I have deep regrets. And, I could just call it now and just post this, but I do...
Call it now!
I do think that there are some scenes that Hayden would find amusing, and so we will continue on. But I hope that we're clear about what this book is and what it's not. And so, tread carefully if you decide to pick this up. Here's the thing. My hope is that you will watch this video and have been curious about the book, and then this is all you need. You know what I mean? You don't need to read the book.
That is true. You do not.
Again, not trying to detract from Penn's, what's the word I'm looking for? Money, get your coin.
Money.
Get your coin. But might I direct you to a different book that I like by this author? And this is one of my favorite authors. I'm gonna put that on the fucking record. Like, this is one of my favorite authors. But not everything could be perfect or an A+, Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has
You do like those problematic men.
Says the least problematic man I know. Oh, we got Pepper in the background. He's cute.
You get to see my knee.
Okay, so we're 50% into Credence. So how's it going? How's your experience with Credence so far?
I can't say it got better.
Yeah, I can't either. And you know what I'm struck with really this time is that I think I figured out what about audiobooks can work or not work for me. I think that I'm finding, well, here's the thing. I feel like in my head, and this is a question that people have asked me too. Sorry, there's so much cat hair on this microphone. People have asked me, do you rate books that you've listened to on audio worse than if you would read the book physically? Like, does that have an impact on your reading experience? And, in the past I've said no, but what I think I'm finding is that if a book is bad, the audiobook really, really points that out. Sometimes reading I don't think it necessarily makes a good book worse. If it's gonna be a 5-star, it's gonna be 5-star. It doesn't matter if I'm listening to it on audio or if I am reading the book physically, but if a book is just not gonna be very good, if I listen to it on audio, it's just really going to point that out. And I think what I'm finding is that this book is not that good. So what I'm finding is that I'm just fucking bored. I'm really bored, and I thought this was going to be like the most jaunty, exciting, thrilling vlog experience, and yet I'm finding that's not the case. How do you feel? I feel like Hayden always has more to say about books because he is really, like, tuned in. He also listens at a slower speed, and here's the thing, respectfully.
Calling him out, huh?
Just because I listen to a book at a fast speed does not mean that I am lacking comprehension of the book. If anything, my lack of comprehension is because I don't fucking care and I'm not listening that like attentively. I mean, if I'm listening attentively to like a 3x speed book, I know what the fuck's going on. This is just so goddamn boring that I keep tuning out because I just don't care.
I'm not bored, but I will say that it does happen to me a lot with the books that I read for these videos.
Yeah.
That I end up cranking the speed up to 2 times, and not so I can get it done with faster. It's because if I listen to it at 1 time speed in comparison to the books that I'm used to listening to, and I think I texted you this the other day, it sounds like the narrators are like reading at a 3rd grade level. Because they speak so slowly.
They speak really slowly. Not only
like this.
do they speak slowly, but I also think there's a difference between an fantasy audiobook and a contemporary romance. Like, I'm not saying that a contemporary romance isn't super developed and complex, but they're easier to digest concepts. These are like real world people. If I miss a word here or there, it's okay. If you ask me what happened over this like past 30%, I couldn't really tell you. A lot of women stay in the kitchen, a lot of trying to fight my sexual spicy feelings for my uncle and cousins.
Yeah, I really didn't like when they had their first like kind of sexual encounter in this portion of the book.
Yeah.
And it was like in the kitchen late at night, and like in the midst of their like sexual tension, she explicitly calls him Uncle Jake. That I did not like at all. Then they go like fishing and swimming, and she like touches herself in a cave or something.
She touches her cave in a cave.
And then I think Caleb like abuses someone physically. We see someone walk out of like a tunnel that they were in. She has like a bloody nose or something, and she was telling him to stop or something. I don't really know for sure what happened there, but it's implied that he decked her in the nose. I'm thinking, and this is just a thought, like I haven't read this before, obviously,
yeah.
Right? I'm thinking in my mind what they're going to try to play what happened is that this girl was like trying to like sleep with him like really hard, and he was not about it, but also he's nonverbal, so he can't tell her stop. He probably tried to like push her away a couple of times, and then she didn't, and so he just like punched her in the face. I think that's how they're gonna try to play that moment of like physical abuse.
I don't even think that she got punched in the face, is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, well, she walked out with a bloody nose.
No, I know,
so.
But I agree with your conjecture, and I think what we're gonna find out is that like he didn't have anything to do with that. Like he wouldn't do that.
Yeah, still not a huge fan.
Why would you want your reader to believe that your hero is capable of that?
And then we have her going back for her parents' funeral, which was less of a part of the book than I thought that it was.
Pretty anticlimactic. I will say, this section of the book, I do think we get more insight into our heroine. We get more insight into kind of just the sad life that she lived, and also how shitty her parents were. We find out more from Jake, honestly, about her parents and about just kind of the people that they were.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
But I only sympathized in the moment. I'm gonna be honest. Like in the moment, there's like a couple of lines or sentiments from Tiernan where she's expressing that like it's just it sucked growing up the way she did, and I felt for her and sympathized for her. But I think like in reading it the first time, I think I let that like overpower a lot of my thoughts about the rest of the book, because I don't think she's really like growing that much in the setting that she's in. Like, is she growing sexual feelings that are misplaced? Yeah. I don't think she is necessarily like developing into someone that I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, like you're becoming a strong person. I don't know.
I think that she is like realizing more about herself and how she's lived and how she's felt about the way that she was raised, but I haven't seen her do anything with that information yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, everyone grows at their own pace, right? And she like just realized these things about herself. What struck me, or the one of the only things that I really remember, was Jake talking about his parents and family and why he left, and that his parents basically like caused his true love to commit by making her think that she cheated on him, something like that. I don't know. It was a little bit wild. And we also find out that the boy's mom is in prison, which, hopefully we'll figure out what that was about at some point. I did pick up on one thing that I think that they're trying to make a theme, where she is talking about how the one thing that her mom taught her was that, like, you shouldn't marry anyone before 3 partners or lovers, and the first one is like passion, the second one is, you know, learning or something like that, and then like the third one is like true love or something. And I think that they are very, very obviously pointing to Jake's first wife or first lover, the second who is their mom, who is in prison.
Oh, you're going in a different
and then like third is going to be her.
Oh,
they're gonna get together.
Did you not also realize there's 3 men?
Yeah, I mean, I guess,
Yeah, I think that's really where we're going with that.
I think it's both. I think it's both ways. I think it's a duality.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for the spoiler.
Yeah, I and you know what? I think it is interesting that you bring that up, and I think it's interesting that is your take on it, because I think a lot of people go into this book expecting her to end up with a certain person who is at the forefront of the story, and she does not end up with that person, and that is what I think I hear as the negative of this book. It's like people are either like, oh, this is too extreme for me, like not my thing, or I don't like who she ended up with. I hear the resounding, I don't like who she ended up with over and over again.
Well, thanks for the spoilers.
And so it's like...
Now we know that she ends up with Cecil or whatever his name is, the other like enemy biker guy, you know, Cedric Diggins.
Yeah. Oh, how could I? There's like so many things to discuss, and yet so little that really matters. Like there's the birthday scene that happens where she gets a belt with many notches.
Yeah, that's too small for her waist, but just the right size for her wrist.
Thanks, cousin.
Yeah, thanks, cousin. And I guess
that was a gift from Caleb.
The very last thing that we get is like the whole bar scene where she gets like cornered in a crowd of people by the one girl who was, I guess, trying to hook up with Caleb, and as well as the enemy biker guy.
Yeah. And
then they have like a scuffle, and then there's a full-on like bar brawl, and then they leave, and Caleb runs over everyone's motorcycles or dirt bikes or whatever, and then there's a whole like chase scene, and then that kind of ends the last chapter that we were reading. That's the 50% mark.
Yeah, it's like we're at the 50% mark, and sure, you could say tons of things have happened, but is anything really driving the story forward? I don't believe so.
You know, it's weird. I was thinking this earlier, and I know that it couldn't be because there hasn't been any cousin fucking. Whenever she goes home for the funeral, and then it cuts back to Noah and Jake like sitting at the table in their house, like eating breakfast and like missing her, wondering won't she come back. That felt like more of like kind of an end like climax point of like a typical one of the typical romances that we've read. Like It Happened One Summer or something like that, where like the person leaves and then like kind of there's like an up in the air decision as to like, will they come back? Yeah. And then they go back home, and then they decide, or they realize like, oh man, I really did like belong there. And so they come back. And I know that that's like obviously not the end of the story, but that point felt more... Yeah,
here's the thing. I think that the climax of the story has not occurred yet.
Oh, I know.
And I think this book is too fucking long. I think like this moment that is included, there's not anything that happens before Tiernan leaves to where you're like, oh, I don't know if she's going to come back. There's no moment.
It's like a guarantee.
There. It's just something that happens. It's not again driving the story forward. It is a thing that happens, and I guess there's a brief moment of the guys being like, is she gonna come back? Then she immediately comes back when they're like, oh, let's go get her. She literally shows up at
She's
that moment.
already there.
She's already there.
She slept there the night before, and not only that, but we don't get her perspective really at the funeral of her like decision to come back. She's just kind of like lamenting about how shit her parents were, and about how she doesn't want to like lie when she goes to say some words about them. We have no idea what she said. And then, yeah, she just appears. There's no point in the moment.
There's no point of tension. Like I said, nothing drives the story forward. There are no moments of tension and relief. I guess you could consider that like the moments where she is having sexual feelings, but I don't think that's enough, again, driving the story forward.
Yeah, the only tension that exists is the tension that I have having to read about her wanting to have sex with her uncle.
Often revisit and reevaluate my feelings on books. That is something that continues to happen because I like to recommend y'all things, but I also, if I haven't read a book in a while, I don't want to recommend you something that I have changed my mind on, right? Mm-hmm. This book, I think I read it when it came out in 2019. It
hasn't been that long then. I mean, I guess that's long for you.
That is a long time for me. It's so interesting when I think about like my time on YouTube. It's been 5 years. It'll be 5 years in July, which is nuts to think about. But my personhood, like me as a person, I've grown so much since I've started my channel. Mm-hmm. And me from 2019 is just a completely different person than I am today.
Interesting.
Like in all ways. In my taste in books, I think, in the things that I'm willing to put up with, and just generally, like, me as a person, I'm so different because of so many things that have happened.
Yeah.
And I think I used to be someone who would go into a new release from an author that I love and pretty much always give it a high rating because I was just so hyped up on it, you know? It would take a lot for it to be, you know, like a 2 or a 1-star read for me. But I think my thoughts and feelings on books have changed so much that I don't really have, like, a kinship to any author at this point. And I think I get asked that question often, like, who are your favorite authors? And it's like, you know, I love Tessa. I do. But, like, this book was just a 3-star read for me, and that's fine. And I don't feel any type of way about this not being perfect. And I feel that way about most authors. There's no author out there who's going to publish something amazing every single time.
Yeah.
For one person, you know? And maybe someone has read this book and has felt deeply seen or connected to it. And I think that's what I love so much about books is the potential for someone to feel seen by it. But that being said, wow, I do not feel the same way about this book reading it a second time around. And
it's interesting that you bring that up because, like, I was just thinking about it, and I think that, like, 2019 is basically when I started reading again.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's just a different situation because of how much you read and all of the different stuff that you read. I think that I would feel exactly the same if I were to reread any of the books that I've read since I started reading.
And, you know, it's interesting. There are some books that I can look back on from, like, middle school, and I know I would feel the same exact way if I read it again. But there are just some books, even in the moment, I know, you know what, if I read this again, I think my feelings would change. And I know I felt that way about Credence. I knew it wasn't, like, some book that was going to, like, always be a 5-star read for me, like, always be something incredible. In the moment, I knew that it wasn't perfect, but I think I was able to kind of just, like, buy into the hype and excitement, and everybody seemed to really like it when it first came out. The people that were, you know, given arcs of it. I was given an arc of this book. Yeah, you know, this has turned into more of, like, a commentary, I guess, just on, like, changing opinions and feelings, but the book isn't that exciting. There's not that much to, like,
I will say I'm very
Speak up.
surprised to hear how strongly your opinion has changed on this book.
Yeah.
Because the way that you talked about it going into it, to me, was like, you knew exactly what you were getting into and you, like, remembered it very well. And so I'm a bit surprised now that we've been, like, reading it, you're like...
Well, here's the thing.
Your change
in the moment, I understood thematically the issues, right? Like,
yeah,
I understood the issues, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to dislike a book. Like, I like taboo stuff. Like, I think a lot of romance readers like things in books that they wouldn't necessarily like or condone in real life. But I think even when I read it the first time around, I was like, yeah, like, I think if you had caught me at a different time, or, like, if I read this again, I don't know if I'd give it the same feeling. I could honestly probably go up to my bookshelves right now and pull a few books that I gave really high ratings to because I read it at the right time or because I was just hyped about it in the moment.
That you probably wouldn't give the same rating to now.
Yeah, and it's not like I have recommended this book very often, I don't think. I did do a dedicated reading vlog to it when it came out, because, you know, why not? And I mean, I definitely had comment. Like, I kind of want to make Hayden watch it and see what he thinks about, like, my commentary.
Original
it was pretty funny.
commentary.
It was pretty funny. But yeah, books are such an interesting thing, and my thoughts and feelings on them. I think my ratings and my thoughts and feelings on every book are so fucking complex. I'm not saying that I'm, like, you know, just incredibly intelligent and whatever, but I am saying that sometimes it's hard to put books into just, like, you know, star ratings or to, you know, have the same feelings and thoughts on a book forever.
Especially when it's a 5-star. Like, 5-star rating system is so difficult for me. Because I feel like I need a little bit more nuance. Like, a 10-star would be good for me.
You could do a 10-star. I mean, here's the thing. I think for me, a 4-star is probably actually a more reliable rating for me. 4-star is not likely to change. A 5-star is just tough because if I give something a 5-star, it's because it pulled an emotion and a reaction from me immediately. It doesn't mean that, like, it is objectively the best book. It's just a book that I feel deeply connected to. Whereas a 4-star is like, oh, it was missing this one thing, but everything else on paper is great. So yeah, maybe that's just something I need to work through. I don't know. Books, man, they're complex and interesting. And you know what? If there's one thing I can say, it is that I am glad that this is what I have decided to build my platform on. Because I feel like there's endless conversation to be had and, like, endless things to revisit. And
now you get to make me listen to a 17-hour version of Back River Quiver.
Honestly, I think Back River Quiver was fun.
Yeah, I would. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I would honestly rather read that. And that's why I told you that the Ice Planet Barbarian one that you made me read, that was my favorite of all of them because it was fun.
It was fun, it was short, it was sweet, and I think we're learning a lot, which is...
It doesn't need to be this long, and also, I don't need, like, the uncle dynamic, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you can't have fun with that or like be into it. But if you're going to, make it
fun.
half the length. I should be done with this already is what I'm trying to say.
Well, here's the good news is that the next 50% is when all of the things are going to be happening. So at least maybe we'll have something to talk about then. I mean, hell, we talked for 20 minutes about basically nothing. So.
And just for y'all's context, I don't know if this matters or not, but I'm listening to this book in the span of about 2 to 3 days, which is much quicker than I typically listen to a book. I mean, first of all, books that I listen to are normally longer, and I listen to them at one-time speed, and I, only listen to them while I'm doing things in specific situations, so it's not like I'm listening to finish a book. So I'm cramming this, and I wish that it could have been over sooner.
That's how I feel. I don't want to say 80% of the time, but often.
I can understand that.
Experience, yeah.
Anyways.
We're going to go eat lunch, and we'll be back tonight with our final thoughts and feelings on this book. I think I have like 3 hours left at 3 times speed, so I'm sure this is going to take Hayden a while. He is committed to our cause, and he is committed to reading more books for the dbbc. So everybody say thank you, Hayden, and hopefully we'll have a more exciting book to read the next time.
Just make it fun and not 17 hours.
If you've even gotten this far and you have something zesty and fun to recommend to us, leave it in the comments. I think I've been struggling with do I want to continue to reread stuff? Should we read things for the first time together? I think the next one I want to do a first time read for me.
I do like that because then you can't spoil it for me.
I don't think you're really that upset, frankly.
I am, honestly. I was trying to make a point and you could have just been like, yeah, maybe we'll see. I like where you're going with that, but you were like, no, that's just
I don't spoil you every time.
Not every time, but it's mostly because half the time you don't remember what happens. This one you just did because...
Shots fired.
Me a parrot over your shoulder.
I hate all of this.
Why?
I don't want to see your thigh. No one wants to see your thighs like that. I'm going to be real with you. Okay, hi. I don't know if we're going to stay in focus because sometimes...
This makes my head look tiny.
You have a tiny head.
Yeah, I know.
But I want to be in... But I want to be in the background so I look cute and small. We finished it.
Yay! You should put a little animation of balloons and confetti.
Yeah, that's a little bit above my pay grade. However, so we finished it and it was a book.
Thank God.
It was a book, in fact. Stars.
Star rating?
Yeah, give it to us.
I'm gonna say 2-star because it was a book and it was finished. There were characters and dialogue.
I agree on both counts.
And a beginning and an end.
2 stars. It was a book. I went back and looked at my Goodreads review, and I also went back and watched my video review, and it's interesting. Wow. Even in my video review, you can see the cracks. You can see that I was not in love with this book. And in my replies to people's comments, they were like, oh, I hated who she ended up with. And I was like, yeah, kind of conflicted. And it was clear in my heart of hearts that it just wasn't for me, but I just couldn't say it, I couldn't say it. It wasn't because of pressure. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I know the comment that I made earlier in the last clip about the whole, number of partners thing, lesson that her mom taught her or whatever. That being said, my first instinct at the very beginning when she first shows up in Colorado and she goes to the candy store and the clerk at the candy store is like, you can't even control Caleb or something like that, and I was like, she's gonna be with Caleb.
I thought you thought she was gonna be with Jake.
No. Well, that's what I'm saying. My first instinct was that she was gonna be with Caleb. Yeah. Because of that was basically the first name that was mentioned. Noah wasn't even mentioned. So I know it's not going to be him, right? Caleb comes in all violent and mysterious at the beginning, and I'm like, I know that they're setting this guy up to be blown out of proportion to who he is, but he also doesn't talk, so it's not like he's going to explain his true feelings and emotions until I also knew that they were going to make him talk at the end, which, I saw them setting that up. Kind of pissed me off, not going to lie. Not for any reason that I can put into words, but I think felt cheap.
Yeah, well, that, and I think part of my issue, too, is I don't like that... I wouldn't say his muteness is to make him come off as more violent, but I just don't like the association that your mind makes between those two things in this book. It felt like a plot device rather than an integrated part of who this person is. And yeah, I'm sure things like this do happen because of trauma. I'm not saying that that's invalid. I just think that the way that he responds to his trauma and acts out physically, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I didn't like that.
And there's also a scene with Noah where he's explaining why he doesn't speak, says, you know, something along the lines of like, he can communicate, he just chooses not to. Don't ever feel sorry for him, especially not in front of him. Something like that. And I was like, I don't know, just the whole thing just made me feel weird and a little,
I guess, here, let's get to the plot of the book, because we haven't really talked that much about the plot of this book. And granted, I don't think there's a whole lot there. Like, there's a lot of shit that happens, but not a lot that leads the story forward. But I think we were both kind of like waiting for the more scandalous moments to occur. How did you feel about some of the like sex scenes in this book?
Awful? What do you mean? Did I like when she almost had sex with her uncle and then did have sex with her uncle? No. Did I like when she had a heavy petting session with both of her cousins at the same time? No. Did I like when there was like a weird sex scene after she like injured herself where like the mute violent guy is like biting her and shit? No. None of it. Did I like the kind of like useless plot surrounding like the other townies and their dirt bike feud? No. I wish that they would have gone more into the dirt bikes. And I know that sounds stupid, but I feel like it could have made the book better if they focused less on the and more on the dirt bikes.
Hayden said dirt roads, but the real kind.
Yeah, like I wanted them to talk about dirt bikes, not dirt pipes. You know what I'm saying?
To be clear, I don't think there were any backdoor scenes.
No, but he specifically said...
I don't remember this.
I won't say the quote itself
Please.
For monetization issues.
I'm gonna have to bleep half of this episode anyway, so...
He said something about, oh, I'm only gonna go in your pussy because he's gonna want your ass, talking about the violent one. He likes that, or something like... No, actually, it was even worse. He said, I get your cherry. As long as I don't touch your ass, he's gonna want that. So... But yeah, they could have gone more into the dirt bikes, you know? That was like a more interesting plot line.
Here's the thing. You put the taboo aside. If you put the banging multiple dudes in one book thing aside, because I'll be honest with you, I think reverse harem didn't fully take off until after this book. I'm not saying this book had a lot to do with it, but I think like they were harder to find or less popular. Now that's a really popular trend, right? I think maybe back in the day this like was a little scandalous, and back in the day that seems like it wasn't published that long ago. It was like 2019, but that being said, I feel like we've come a long way, and that's not enough to keep me interested or intrigued in a book at this point. I pointed out in my Goodreads review that like the taboo is just taboo. Like I used to be impressed by it, especially when authors could like do it well. And here's the thing, if you can do it really well, I still am kind of impressed. I think most authors like just do it for the shock and awe factor. And I don't know that that was the intent here. That being said,
don't get me wrong, it did shock and awe me, but I was shocked that someone would write this.
Don't think that if we put all of that aside, if we put like the really taboo stuff aside, which obviously makes up a big portion of this book, if we put all of that aside, it was not a very well plotted story. I don't feel like this story moved in a way that led to a lot of character growth. I don't feel like there was a lot to be learned or gleaned here, which is interesting because that's like in direct opposition to what I said the first time I read this book. And I think it's just because there was talk of like neglect rather than abuse, and I don't think I had read that in a lot of books up until this point. But I've read so many romances since then that have that as a plot point and do it better. So I'm less impressed this time around, and I really don't think that our heroine grows very much. If anything, she is shaped by her shitty circumstances and doesn't do much to like actually go after what she wants. At the end of the book, in the epilogue, we find out she goes to college, and then she also has like a baby when she's in college or something like that. And I think we're supposed to be impressed by that, but I'm not impressed by that. I thought that was just kind of sad. Like, oh, here's a throwaway. Oh, she did go to school, but also she's having his babies. I like babies, okay? I think babies are very cool. I would like to have some of my own one day. That being said, I don't know that that is the way to tie up this sort of story. I don't think that that is giving her the independence and the she's doing shit for herself sort of vibe that she needs, because, you know, parents were neglectful, but obviously as a kid, you're always trying to like impress your parents and make them love you. And I think it would have been a really radical act for her to like not end up with any of the guys, to be honest, or to end up with one of the guys and then them have some like awesome egalitarian relationship, and like the person she ends up with is actually the one who like treats her the best. Mm-hmm. You know? Mm-hmm. Like if we had developed Noah more, he could have been a great choice, I think.
Yeah, well, I immediately knew it wasn't going to be him because he was the only, like, I don't want to say, like, normal person.
Yeah.
Because that sounds, like, bad because he also was kind of a piece of shit.
But I'm saying, had he been developed in a slightly better way, I think he could have been a really great candidate. Like, maybe at the beginning, she doesn't see him as viable because he's, like, the boring choice. But as time goes on, she's like, no, actually, I deserve someone who's going to treat me really well. And maybe I've been with these other guys because they're not actually treating me well, and I'm just like seeking what I used to seek from my parents, which was like, you know, a little bit of love. And
it just like
psychologizing,
the story as a whole to me felt very disjointed. I was about to say there was no like conflict resolution, but I think the actual problem was there were too many conflicts and too many resolutions. They were all so small individually because their own like each like conflict plot wasn't developed very much, that none of them really seemed like conflicts or resolutions to those conflicts, because none of them individually were developed enough to be something or what they were meant to be.
The way that most storytelling should be is that there should be a main plot and then a couple of subplots. And the subplots should wrap up at different times during the story. They shouldn't wrap up all at once. They shouldn't wrap up sequentially, but they need to be a way to like break the tension in a story.
Can you tell me what the main plot was in this one?
No, because there isn't a strong one, and that's what I'm saying. The issue is
that was my problem.
There were a ton of subplots. There was not a main plot. And sure, you could say in a romance the main plot is a romance, which is true. But this one, because there are 3 different guys, it doesn't feel that way. If you want to have 3 different guys and she cycles through them, make it kind of linear and make it to where she has these little like vignettes almost. Like, this is her time spent with this person. This is kind of what she learned. Let's move on to the next guy. And maybe that was the intent, but it didn't feel that way because she also still feels lingering sexual feelings towards the guy she was just with but isn't with anymore. It just makes things confusing.
Well, that's the thing. She's never not with any of them. Like,
yeah,
the whole...
There's no time to breathe.
You saying vignettes, the vignettes that we're talking about where she spends time with each guy, is each guy trying to be possessive of her, force themselves onto her sexually, her saying, no, please stop. They don't stop. And then she's like, I don't know, maybe I kind of like this. And then on to the next one. So it was awesome.
I fully like picked this book, by the way, or like put it on the list of potentials because I was like, what's something like that Hayden would have good commentary on? And did he have good commentary? Yes. But was this enjoyable for either of us? No.
Here's my problem is I don't know, maybe y'all think that I had good commentary on this one compared to some of the other ones, but I don't feel that way only because, and this might be weird to say, but there were like...
Co-star.
Where'd he go? There were so many things to talk about in this book that I was basically speechless, because in order to talk about all of them would take as long as the audiobook. It would take 17 hours of me talking to really give my thoughts on like all of the issues that I had with this book and like all of the things that I didn't like.
It's not like fresh and new things every time too, because it's just a lot of the same stuff happening over and over again.
Yeah, for a long time.
That's the thing, yeah. So I really think for like our next book, I would love it to be something that's like fun.
Yeah, I already said that. And like, I don't even necessarily know what that means, but like, I think you know what that means. I think they know what that means. Like, I've read fun bad, and I've also read, I guess, technically good. And I've also read not fun bad. And I'll tell you, this one, my least favorite, I will say, of all of the ones that we've read so far.
Fair pick.
I would rather read out any of the other dumb bitches that we've covered, aside from this one.
Tiernan's not even dumb. She was just unfortunately groomed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't a fave, but you know what?
So it's like, does she even belong?
She doesn't. She firmly does not belong in the Dumb Bitch Book Club. She's just a sad victim of circumstances.
Yeah, sad victim of circumstances, bitch book club.
So, on that note, if y'all have any ideas for us, please leave them in the comments down below. I think we'd like to stick with adult books. I don't know about you. I'm not really in a YA mood, you know?
Oh, yeah. I'm basically never in a YA mood, mostly because I listen to the audiobooks and YA narrators. No offense, but not my cup of tea.
So, yeah, we're definitely going to want adult, most likely romance. But, you know, if you've got some good stuff for us, let us know. Honestly, I probably should have just read Fourth Wing with Hayden.
What's Fourth Wing?
It's a dragon book.
Is it fun?
There's a real dumb bitch involved. Hey, y'all, let me know. I've gotten 50% into that one, but I could start from the beginning and read it with you.
Pepper's clawing me back here.
He's just giving you love.
He's just a boy.
Can y'all see the boy?
Yeah, they can see him. He's the worst.
All right, camera's dying, so we're gonna go. But thanks so much for watching. Love y'all so much. And until next time.
Till next time.